Hi, how's it going? Thanks for being here this evening. I'm so excited to spend time with you. Um, I am not used to all of this, so if I break out into song and start dancing, you'll have to forgive me because I usually don't have and then lights and everything, and then oh my God. Okay, it's like a dream come true. Um, okay, so this topic, coming home, liberating the environmental movement from supremacy. I'm not sure what I was thinking with this title for an hour or in some. So we have a lot of work to do tonight because we're going to liberate the entire movement in one evening, in one workshop. Are you ready? You're going to need those muscles. Ah, okay. Sorry. Okay, let's get started. So I don't want to push the wrong button. Yes, I did not push the wrong button. Okay. So here's kind of a rough outline of what we'll be doing. Am I turning my head too much, Steve? Is this bothering you? Is this okay? Oh, sorry. Okay. Here's a rough outline of our time together. I say rough because I imagine we may meander like oxbows. It's a river organization. I had to say that. Um, to follow. And so, yeah, we're going to be doing this. Okay. Norm setting. I am not a scientist. So this is not a science-based talk. This is a heart and spirit-based presentation. I am sharing my journey as an earthling, as a spiritual being having a human experience. That's where I'm coming from. And so I'm inviting you to step into this paradigm with me. So I am hoping to create a safe and brave and vulnerable space to engage this topic in a way that may be new to you. That being said, it is imperative that you ask questions, share your responses, and voice what you're going through as we continue. Are you with me? Okay, thank you. All right, so we're gonna jump right in. I'm gonna ask you to turn to someone next to you and take some time to answer these questions. There will be a quiz after, you know. So take about 5 minutes. Take turns, 2.5 minutes per person. That equals 5, yes. And then just ask each other these questions. Who are you? How do you know? What brings you joy? What motivates you? What is your relationship to yourself? Who or what is Earth? How do you know? What is your relationship to Earth? What do you hope to discover tonight? And are you having fun yet? Okay. So take about 5 minutes. Someone will kindly set a timer because I did not. But I'll try to keep track. Okay, are you ready? Questions? Okay. Find someone on your marks, get set, go. Are we okay? You, you have about 2 more minutes. So you have about 45 seconds left. Oh, all right. Time is up. So come back to the big group. Those of you that are in Zoom land, if you would please drop some comments in the chat. So I would like to take about 5 minutes to discuss. Tell me what this experience was like for you, and tell me what some of what arose for you. Let's take about 5 minutes. Yes. Thank you for being the first to speak. I really appreciate that. Oh, wait, hang on, hang on. We're gonna put a microphone aggressively in your face. Oh, not yet. No, apparently no.
Testing. Okay, that sounds good.
That's
great. Echo. All right. So hello. Oh, sorry. Turns out it's not you can't give a simple answer in 5.
Yes. Okay.
It's a very complex question.
How about just a response to one of the questions? Or is that still, it's too complex, huh? All right.
I'll let it go to the next person. And
All right.
no one else volunteers, then I'll give me 2 minutes. I'll volunteer again.
Thank you for sharing. Yes.
Well, Peter and I had never met,
Mm-hmm.
and I guess we started at the beginning. Who are you? And there's just a little, I don't know, a little background, like your name,
Mm-hmm.
kind of what your background is. And he started with a religious content of Buddhism,
Ah,
which
okay.
maybe isn't religious, philosophical.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm a scientist, so we sort of just ended up more talking about that, like what brought us joy in our lives. We never got past the first line.
Okay.
We didn't get onto the earth, but I made a new friend, so that was good.
That's fantastic. Thank you.
And here's a further thing about the Buddhist view. There is no self. We are all connected.
Mm-hmm.
So I am you, you are me.
Mm-hmm.
It's all about relationships.
Mm-hmm.
So this sort of, and if you look, what is the earth? I am the earth too.
Mm-hmm.
The earth is me.
Mm-hmm.
There's all of that.
We're done here. Thank you. Mm-hmm. Okay. Beautiful. Thank you. Anyone else? Oh, do you have, oh, you've got somebody in Zoom land? Okay. Will you share what the people in, yeah.
I think I'm on now. All right. So we do have a couple from Zoomland. So Jamie says, what brings me joy is walking along the Mississippi River here in Minnesota. How cool is that?
That's really cool.
I'm not seeing last names just the way Zoom's acting right now, but Lisa says, I think of the earth as a living organism that receives and responds to changes. I'm a tiny organism on this enormous organism.
Mm-hmm.
And Lona Weiss says, what brings me joy? My grandchildren. Oh, it just moved. So I want to protect the earth and nature for them to enjoy, hopefully in ways I enjoy our natural resources. And Susie adds, very philosophical questions. I guess I see myself as a transient organism on Earth. I feel connected to the Earth when I can stop and truly experience the world around me with as many senses as possible.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you, people on Zoom land. Anyone else in here? Oh, that was, anyone else in here have something to share? Yes, okay.
Uh, I just met these two behind me when we started this exercise. And one of the things that I said was who I was, my name. And I said, my river name is Boot. And they asked me how I got that name. I gave them the very short story of how I got it, swimming in the river with boots on. And then we talked about how really who we are changes, you know? And I said, yeah, I didn't really get my name until I was 49.
Ah,
And then what brought us joy was trees, forests,
mm,
and being on a boat on a lake. And I said I've been very grateful for the earth and sky,
yeah.
and that give me much happiness.
Thank you. Yes, 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 yes. Thank you all for participating in that. Right off the bat, you came to a talk thinking you were going to have to sit back and listen, and then I put you in the hot seat, and you just took that on. Thank you. It'll become clear as the evening progresses why we started out that way. I'm going to tell you a little bit about my story now. So I started writing about environmental issues in 2011 with the same, I can't remember who it was on Zoom who said, because I love Earth, I want to protect it. And that's what got me interested in researching and writing about environmental issues. And I am not a scientist, but I am a research nerd. And so I would do deep dives into topics and write about them. And that led to some work in environmental education, which is how I got to know this amazing organization. So I worked in environmental ed. I worked as a farm to school coordinator, which was such an amazing job. I got to grow food with students and work with farmers to bring food into the school and work with a chef to cook the food. It was sweet. And I also then that led to work as a farmhand, which I also loved because I got to be outside all day and not have to talk to people. You know, I don't have a poker face, so sometimes it's good for me not to be around people. Right now, you're getting the beautiful, happy me because of the way my relationship with Earth has transformed me, and I will be talking about that some more. And then I worked in green infrastructure, and that was really challenging. Environmental work is hard. You are going against entrenched systems. I want to talk about stories because we live inside stories. Stories shape our reality. The stories we tell about ourselves. Just now, I told you some stories about myself that may or may not be true, but it's a belief I have. It's a construct. We all live inside stories. So if this is true on the individual level, we can see then how stories can shape us on a collective level. The stories we have about ourselves, about other people, about what is available to us relationally, what is available to us in systems, and what our relationship with Earth can be. That resides in a story. We're not aware of it as a story, as a construct, because it's endemic. We just live it and think of it as reality. With me so far? Okay. Oh, whoa, what did I just do? Danger, danger, Will Robinson. Okay. Okay. So tonight we're going to unpack how characteristics of supremacy inform our stories about ourselves, other beings, Earth, and the relationships we have with ourselves, Earth, and other beings. Let me give you an example of what I mean. The Abrahamic religions have a story of man having dominion over Earth. And by man, I mean male. And we see how that story plays out. This idea that we can dominate, that we can consume, that we can use up, is a story that we still live inside of in terms of our relationship with Earth. It's endemic. We're not aware of how that story plays out. And yet it does. As I provide you questions, comments, facial expressions. Okay, yes. I focused on the Abrahamic religions because that's what I grew up with. So I can't speak to outside of that. And also because I live in the United States, that predominates Western culture here. So that's why I picked that. Great question. Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to provide you some details on these characteristics of supremacy. At the end, I'll give you like a works cited slide, and you'll have access to all these slides to tell you where I got this list from. Okay, ready? As I'm sharing this, consider how it is relevant to your story, where these characteristics reside within you. And then we're going to look at how they manifest in our relationship to other beings, to Earth. You with me? Okay. Either or thinking. Things are either or, good or bad, right or wrong, with or against us. This creates conflict and increases a sense of urgency. It leads to the faulty syllogism. We must do something. This is something. We must do this. Where do you see that play out in your life? Does it play out in your life? This dualistic framing around whatever arises for you. Where do we see that in environmental initiatives? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh. Oh, yeah, either stop the flooding with a dam or be destroyed by the flood, right? And so that creates a sense of urgency. It's either this or we're gonna all die. Okay. Fear of open conflict, emphasis on being polite. So it equates raising of difficult issues with being impolite, rude, out of line. So when someone raises an issue that causes discomfort, blame is put on that person for raising the issue rather than addressing the actual problem. I see some people nodding like, oh yeah, you've experienced this. Some people experience that in their family dynamic, right? If you're the person that says, hey, this is a shit show, you're the one who gets like called out for that rather than the shit show being addressed. I hope it's okay that I said shit show. And I did that on purpose because this emphasis on being polite is really, again, this word endemic in our culture. And being polite is not the same as being kind or authentic or compassionate. And I think a lot of times in supremacy, the default is politeness, which is not necessarily from the heart. And in my mind, I liken it to good environmental behavior versus bad environmental behavior. Neither are about true relationship, but it's about how a thing looks. Questions, comments, points of resonance? Okay, individualism. You alone are responsible for solving problems. Competition is more highly valued than cooperation. Little experience in recognizing oneself as a part of an ecosystem in your community with other humans, let alone part of a natural ecosystem. And then the drive for individual recognition and credit. Does that resonate for anyone? This drive to, yeah. When my kids were little and I was a rabid environmentalist, I was the mom at every school event stationed by the trash and recycling bin to rescue all the recyclables out of the trash. That was my responsibility. That was a story I lived inside of. Objectivity, the belief that there is such a thing as objectivity or neutrality. We are discovering more and more through quantum physics that there is no objective reality. So try that. Yeah, right. Take that for a ride. Impatience with any thinking that does not appear logical or not objective, there's no tolerance for that. Emotions are destructive, irrational, and are to be dismissed in decision-making or group processes. Is this resonating for folks? Are you recognizing this in your own lives, in your relationships, or the work structures you're in, or y'all have poker faces, so I can't tell? Yes. Yeah, happy to repeat. Yes. Yeah. I think he was told he had to be aggressive with the mic. So so he's taking his job very seriously. Yes. Mhm. In its own sense. That is a great point, and I'm so glad you said that, because I'm not saying this is bad. I'm just saying there's perhaps an imbalance, and that this has tended to dominate, and we can ask, where has that gotten us? Yeah. I mean, yeah. How about that? Yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's not the only story. 100%. Yes. Could you all hear him? He said science. How about science as a story? Yes. Are we good? Oh, okay. Okay. And because I didn't do a good job repeating, even though, Steve, you just said repeat, and I was like, yeah, I got it. Yes. Okay. Yeah. We're learning as we go. Yeah. I'll come back next week. This will be down pat. Okay. Um, it requires, oh, we've got a question, comment.
Oh, no, I had a comment just to add on to this. I thought this
Please.
was really interesting because a lot of people are saying science is objective. And so I have a social science background,
Mm,
which is anything but objective. And we often argue from social science backgrounds, like different paradigms of like, are these subjective? Are these objective? And it's a really hard field to like kind of navigate that with when you're working with more of like these traditional bench scientists who are objective. So that's something we face a lot in academia when we're doing that kind of research in social sciences.
Oh, I'm so glad you said that. Thank you. Thank you for that comment. Are there comments on Zoom that we need to keep track of? Because you're not, I'll come back to you. Okay. Objectivity requires people to think in a linear fashion and dismisses those who orient differently. I am this kind of thinker. I make really giant circles and go around and around and around to get to where I need to go. And yet so much of what we do in supremacist construct is assume a linearity or impose a linearity on things that feel more like meandering rivers. Had to do that again. Okay. Questions, comments?
I can come back to these.
Mhm.
Either or thinking limits us in opportunities to compromise.
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
Example, we need clean drinking water, but we also need to find ways of taking care of our wastewater safely.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's it.
Thank you, Zoom person. Only one right way. So once people see the right way, they'll do it. And if they don't, they're stupid, basically. And I think that was a lot of my imperative to blog about environmental issues. I thought, well, surely if I provide people data and information and how to, they'll do the right stuff. And I was like confused why that wasn't happening. Yeah. Paternalism. Decision-making is clear to those with power and unclear to those without. Those with power are entitled to make decisions for and in the interest of those without. We see that play out and we normalize it in so many ways. And I can't help but wonder if paternalism is part of why marginalized women in prisons or women of color have been given hysterectomies, essentially spayed, without their consent or knowledge. That is one of the ways that supremacy or paternalism concretely plays out in our systems. Perfectionism. Whew. Anyone struggle with that one? Oh, just me. Okay, thanks. Mistakes are personal. They reflect badly on the person making them. I put PF because a lot of us live with this belief that it's pass fail rather than it's a learning and that you're constantly evolving. Power hoarding. Well, perfectionism kind of goes with the either or too, right? You can see how there's relationship between these characteristics, yeah? Questions, comments? I'm throwing a lot at you. It's getting dark. Are you with me? Okay.
Back to the individualism part, it reminds me on how a couple examples I think about is
Mhm.
someone brought up clean water and all that stuff, and people personally buying filters to filter the water in their
Mhm.
house, or personally having to make decisions on reducing the consumption of plastic in their
Mhm.
life, or yeah, personally just placing a lot of this weight on your shoulders, which can be very heavy. And then what happens is usually people are like, well, I give up because there's nothing I could do right.
Right. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and yeah,
Within these structures, it's very it's constricted. You don't have a lot of room for movement.
yeah, yeah, most definitely.
Yeah. Thank you. Oh, power hoarding. Little, if any, value is seen in sharing power. I would venture to say sharing resources, ideas as well. And power is seen as limited. And I can't help but feel a lot of compassion as I share these characteristics with you, because that would be an awful way to live all the time. This is burdensome. I know we're calling it supremacy as though that this to be dominant is somehow a power position, but it's really, like you just said, there's a constriction and an overwhelm of the burden of carrying this sort of story within yourself. Those with power feel threatened when anyone suggests change. How guarded must you be? Quantity over quality. So the end goal is greater than process. By the way, I'm not going to just read slides to you all night. In case you were thinking, oh gosh, how many more are there? I'm not reading slides to you all night. End goal is greater than process. Destination more important than the journey. And resources are directed toward producing measurable goals. And I wonder how that impacts nonprofits and educational institutions and other systems that are trying to do a good work, but are in need of really juicy processes in order to get to that. But then the money is towards that, not the interactions and the dynamics. Because supremacy measures, values measurable things more than things that aren't measurable. Right to comfort. You made me think of right to comfort with your comment earlier. Those with power have a right to physical, emotional, and psychological comfort, right? I can filter my own water. I can take my own bags. I can walk here. I can ride my bike. There's a certain level of privilege that allows that right to comfort. Those who cause discomfort are often scapegoated, and sometimes expressed ideologies are bypassed for one's comfort. For example, you may be against extractive industries, and yet you purchase an EV. There's a contradiction there, yeah? Again, it's that constraint within these supremacist constructs. Sense of urgency, holy moly. Perpetual sense of urgency makes it difficult to be inclusive, to encourage democratic or thoughtful decision-making, to think long-term or consider consequences or impacts. A sense of urgency all the time about environmental issues is a trauma response. You are in active trauma. You cannot have imaginative space when you are in trauma. So solutions cannot arise from that state. Worship of the written word. Um, formal education is valued over life experience. We can see how that marginalizes or excludes certain demographics from participating in necessary conversations. And other ways of knowing are not valued. That's why I gave you all these words. Okay, comments, questions, points of resonance. I have to say, it's also why my impulse to start blogging was because I love nature. I love being in nature. I have transcendent, mystical experiences in the natural world. But because supremacy runs through me, because it's something I've absorbed, I did not feel like that was enough to write from and speak from that space. So I had to do a lot of research so that I could substantiate what I had to say with science, with facts, with graphs, as though having blissed out experiences in the woods, on the river, in the prairie is not enough. Yeah. What do you want me to do with that?
No,
Oh.
I'm raising it to ask a question.
Oh, okay.
Or to
I thought
make
you were
a
gonna hand
comment.
it to me. I'm like, I already got one mic.
No,
Go.
that's where I'm at a disadvantage having
Oh,
a
you're okay.
dual rows, but
Yes.
several things popped out, but the one I wanted to stop and address when you asked for comments was about urgency. That's one of those things that they use to drive us away from the process of collective, collaborative counsel, the inefficiencies of group meetings to come to consensus in order to have the most rational a decision on whatever it may be necessitates dictatorship.
Right,
The
yeah.
the tyranny of the representative.
Yes, exactly. Yes. And I think about that oh, go ahead, Kristen. I think about that in terms of green solutions. And green solutions are again sacrificing Black and brown bodies. And yet when you bring that up in environmental conversations, people will say that's a transitional thing, as though Black and brown bodies can be sacrificed as we transition to something else. No. Yeah.
I was just thinking about this worship of the written word, and
You went away
it-
for a second.
sorry.
There you go. No, sorry, necessary.
I feel like throughout my career in environmental education, I've always gravitated towards equity inclusion work and never really, I don't know, you're putting together pieces right now that when I was growing up, I had dyslexia. And so the value that was really placed on written word and language and things like that were something that I was constantly being confronted with from a very young age to into adulthood and even, last week.
Yeah.
And so it makes me just think about how you're framing this in this sense of formal education valued over life experiences. And I think there was a period of time where I thought I was just going to take a jobs and then not ever go to college and just experience my way through this career. But as I got into the career, I was told that wasn't how this worked.
Oh, hang on a second. Your mic went out.
All right, I've traded mics.
Okay.
There we go. And that could have been me pressing the button, but it's interesting to think about, I think, in the same idea of how my path was directed in terms of how supremacy affected it. But even now, how much people fight to uphold it as well. Even in this written spoken word, and having dyslexia means I say things backwards. I don't say things correctly all the time. And so in my experience, I've had to ask people for tolerance. Or there's this misguided judgment that I don't value written word at the same degree or level So it's interesting for you to frame this through that supremacy lens.
Yeah. When you're saying that, it makes me think of how supremacy forces a monoculture. The energy expended and the time, emotional energy, mental, intellectual energy that was diverted for you to like address and deal with dyslexia was energy that could have been allocated to whatever natural, authentic, what's the word I want? Like just organic ways of being that you have. And so again, it's this idea of constricting, like because it's so dualistic, either or, dismissive, pass fail, that kind of thing, all of that energy, and then what that does to you inside, like what does that do to your story of self? Because that's what this is all about. Like, what is the story of self that we carry around and as a result are manifesting in the world on some level? Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. And thank you for trusting this space to share that. And I'm really grateful that this spoke to you. Other comments? Yeah.
I think looking at these pieces individually is really valuable. Something that you come across a lot in this environmental field, you know, there's always this, I can't believe that so-and-so thinks this way, or I can't believe they believe that. And I think this is a way to kind of break down that phrase and really look at, you know, what does that really mean? You know, these people have a different background. Everybody has different experiences and beliefs, and being able to kind of look at these individual pieces,
Yeah.
I think is really useful to kind of, you know, break that sort of off the cuff statement into what does that really mean when you're saying that about someone or a different group?
Yeah, thank you for that comment. Yeah. So I shared this on Facebook and for some reason it got banned and kicked off Facebook. I don't know why. But before it did, someone had put in the comments, how do humans colonize Earth any more than ants do? And like ants, like, and that really threw me. And I wanted to throw a lot of judgment on it, but it also made me think like, wow, this person is coming from someplace I have no idea where they're coming from with their life experiences, with their constructs, with their stories. Like they somehow made a connection between ants and humans colonizing behavior. And I was like, but then, you know, I got banned off of Facebook for sharing this event and I couldn't, I know. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, maybe because the word supremacy is in the title. Is that what it is? I'm going to start putting more stuff out there. It's kind of exciting. It's a highlight of my life. No, I'm joking. All right. Yes. Before we move on, comments. Yes.
I appreciate your reference to the EVs and how that's an environmental catastrophe in order to save the environment. And just wanted to note that perhaps you're being banned is that there are the powers that be are being threatened. So no one wants to hear that the lithium ion batteries are the mark of the future when there are alternatives to that, and they're not the powers have gotten so entrenched and there's so much money being made, and that they don't want to consider alternative ways of looking at things. But that sense of urgency, you know, we got to get this solved right now rather than taking the time to do the research and find, as in the case of batteries, there are batteries that I know of a saltwater battery that is environmentally friendly, and but it's never mentioned as an alternative to the other things. So I appreciate the reference to how we rush headlong in, and in the organic movement, for example, there's it started off as being you know, small farms, individual enterprise, and now the big guys have come in and taken over, and they've eroded the standards for what's considered organic. in that process, that sense of urgency and that people wanting to control and paternalism, all of these factors come into play.
Yes.
And prevent a real community-based way of living.
So I'm going to piggyback off of what you said, and I'm also going to challenge what you said. What you just said, is that reality or is that a construct we have about reality? I mean, it appears to be a reality that these situations are happening and the powers that be are doing this and manipulating and doing all that. Yes, and it is also a construct, because within that story, there is opportunity for movement and growth and change. I'm going to, science people, help me out on this one. We know that in an atom, like 99.9 whatever percent, it's information and space, right? But there's only like a fraction of the atom that's actual right? Particulate matter. Is that correct? Okay. So I'm not a science person, but I'll get up this little piece of science and I'm going to run with it. So one could understand that there is a lot more space for imagination, for creating something completely other, because the majority of what we consider reality is actually opportunity. It's energy that we can utilize to create something other. However, because we are inside these stories, we're going to keep creating the same reality. That is why we started by talking about our stories. That is why we are breaking down each one of these characteristics of supremacy so carefully, because that's woven in our story. And somebody that I started following recently that is really just turning my world on its head said that when we change our story, we change our reality, right? So reality out there is not going to change until we change the story we're carrying around about reality. We cannot change our relationship with Earth until we unlock and excise this supremacy from within ourselves. Yes.
This reminds me of a quote from, I'm forgetting her name. I think it's Robin, who writes Braiding Sweetgrass. She says,
Robin Wall Kimmerer? Robin,
yeah.
Yeah.
She says, before restoration must first come restoration.
Say it again.
Before restoration must first come restoration.
Yeah, restoration. Yes, that's right. I actually mentioned her later on, so high five. Yay. Okay. So we kind of did this already. Wait, hang on. That was just a lot of stuff. Can we do like a little bit of a movement break? Like just do a little, I know it's awkward to do, but you are embodied beings. Like get up and shake things out. All of you, I know some of you are like college students and you're too cool for it, but get up anyway. Do a little movement. If you want to have an embodied relationship with Earth, you got to have an embodied relationship with, I see you not moving over there. Wait, maybe he's asleep. Okay. Okay. Oh, dang it. I did it again. I keep doing that. All right. You ready to go? Keep going? Okay. Steve, what do I keep doing wrong when I want to scroll down here? It's all right. Like, oh, it's that button. You don't see what we're doing up here. Yeah, see, I keep doing that. Yeah. Okay. Thanks. All right. All right. So we kind of did this already together. These are the questions that you all discussed. And then we kind of looked at how characteristics of supremacy might be woven into your story of self. Any more about this before we move on to the next thing? Yes.
One thing I want to say is that this room, this is a very interesting topic, etc. It's wonderful, but if you're hard of hearing, it's really difficult. This place is really echoey.
Okay.
So I'm hearing a lot of the things through this this muffle, this mist, should we say? But let me just
Wait,
make
hang
one
on. Is it
point.
coming out of
There's two-
here or?
There's nothing. I don't think there's anything you can do about it. I think it's just
Okay.
the acoustics of this room.
Okay.
But I just wanted to get this really clear that we live within stories. And how do you know something? You know something because it fits within your story. It might be a story of science.
Mhm.
It might be a story of religion. But this is what we're talking about.
Mhm.
We're talking about living within the stories. The stories are us. That's how we know things.
Yes.
But if we're in a different story, we know different things.
Yeah.
That fit in that story.
Mhm. And we only change.
And we live in this world of story. Your story is different from my story. It's always going to be.
Mhm. Yes. Yes. Thank you.
And so this is what language is about. It's about coming together, somehow coming to a collective story
Hmm.
about a healthy earth,
Mhm.
a healthy planet.
Oh, yes. We're getting there.
Okay.
Yes.
There's a couple of comments online
Fantastic.
that kind of just tie right into this. I think you can jump right off them, but
Mhm.
actually this one is from online, but it's actually from him. So he's over here typing stuff. It says reality is consensual. The struggle
Yeah,
to dominate the
consensual.
narrative is the struggle for power.
Mm.
And then Rainbow says reality is highly subjective and deeply personal. The struggle to dominate the narrative is indeed the struggle for consensual power. So an echo there.
There's some deep people out there. That's good stuff. Okay. We ready? Okay. So I wanted to give a couple examples of how supremacy is manifesting in concrete ways. When my kids were in school, when they were little, yeah, I have the word sphincter up there. When my kids were little in school, they learned the continents. The definition of a continent is what? Surrounded by water. And they learned that there are 7 continents. However, North and South America are connected by I'm going to mispronounce this word. No, I'm not. Isthmus. And then Africa and Asia are also connected by a isthmus. Yeah, that's such a good Scrabble word. Europe and Asia are connected, not by an isthmus, but yes. So where do we get the idea that there are 7 continents? Whose agenda does that serve? How did that happen? And why? Is supremacy connected? I don't know. You be the judge. Okay. Another example. This is Louis XIV. Well, I don't know if that's actually him, but it's a picture I found on the internet of him. He is responsible for why women birth laying down. No other mammal births in that position. It is not medically or biologically sound to have a mammal lay on their back to birth. I did not learn that until after the birth of my second daughter. When I read Ina May Gaskin, who is an amazing midwife and wrote some really incredible books about midwifery, if any of you are thinking about ever having babies. And the only reason women are made to lay down is because Louis here wanted to watch his mistress or his whoever birth a child. And as often happens, this is before TikTok and Instagram, that he was like an influencer. So all these other people were like, oh, I'm going to have birth laying down too. And then it became normalized. That does not serve the birthing, that the person with the uterus birthing. That does not serve them. And yet it's normalized. You tell me if supremacy is woven in there in some way. Oh, by the way, it's called the bulbocavernosus sphincter. And if you Google list of sphincters in the body, that one's not listed because it's only in bodies of people with uteruses or vaginas. is that, tell me, is there supremacy in that? Okay, moving on. Okay, so earlier I told you a little bit about me. These are the things I did in the environmental movement. And I mentioned that I had children, three daughters who are into hair products, nails, clothing, shoes, stuff. And I felt like my life was turning into two non-intersecting Venn diagram circles. There was this rabid environmentalist in me. And then I had daughters who were in school culture, which is all about consume, 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 and throw away. Really, you need a uniform every season for every event, for every. So I would go to these environmental things, and it was mainly older people, but I'm an older person, so I feel funny saying that. So it was, and then I would go to these school things that was full of people just like buying and using and trashing things. And there was no mixing of the two, even though there were recycling bins at school, just again, the politeness thing, but not an authentic relationship thing. So that was what I was hearing from the environmental world had no relevance to what was happening with my children in the schools and in their lives. And so for me, that was like the big wake-up call of, holy shit, this stuff is largely irrelevant the way we're doing it. And that was pretty devastating to me. So this is a picture of a typical college move-out day. And it's painful for me. It was painful for me to recognize that this is happening on college campuses over and over and again every semester. When I was a high school English teacher, at the end of the semester, this is what you would see: two kids just throwing out all their stuff. Are you okay? Okay. Am I moving you to tears? Yes. Okay, talk about that. Or you don't have to.
No, I can. I mean, yes, slightly embarrassing to be emotional, but yeah, I'm 3 months pregnant.
No. This is what we're here for.
I'm
This
3
is
months
it.
pregnant, so I have a little bit of pregnancy hormones, but also like, I just really appreciate this conversation because, yeah, I feel like you talking about all these kind of disparate parts of self and like disparate parts of your life. Like, I feel like I've had to just let go of some of the like convictions that I had in order to live my life, in order to protect my heart, in order to be happy.
Yes.
I think about having this child, and like, I'm so interested in what you're about to say about this, because it's like, okay, it's very important for me. I wanted to have a child. And at the same time, I realized that that's more resources, more people on the planet, more, so yeah, I find this conversation very helpful and
Good.
in good time.
Good.
So,
I'm so glad.
yeah.
I'm so glad you're here. And hold on to that thought, because I want to circle back to it. And if I don't, do something to get my attention. Okay. Okay. Thank you for saying something. And thank you for your heart. And thank you for what you're feeling. Part of supremacy is shutting down emotions, right? And being objective and being cerebral and going mental. And the world needs heart. We need our hearts to feel. Thank you for bringing that. So this is the story that we live inside of, this right here, that we can consume and discard, consume and discard. This is an element, obviously, of supremacy, because if you have dominion and you get to use Earth for your own purposes, this is allowed under that story. And so I would venture to say that I do not think that this story can be greened. And whatever greening we do to make this more palatable is akin to being polite. Made green, like environmentally green. Performative, yes. Yes. What were you saying? Artificially green, yes. We are called to something more emancipatory because we cannot create something out there in the world if we haven't created it within. What did you say? We have to restory in order to restore, right? Yes. Okay. If we don't do that, then we're repeating the same story, right? The lithium, like you mentioned, the lithium mining, the cobalt mining do not look much different than the tar sands. Because it's the same story that we're living inside of, a story of domination, of fear, of urgency. This is not a love relationship, and we are called to a love relationship. Oh, by the way, so in here, what characteristics of supremacy do you see at play? I mean, I think we touched on it, but I kind of wanted to do a review for a second. Yeah. Individualism. If I drive my EV, then I'm doing good for the planet. Sense of urgency. Only one right way. Absolute alienation. Yeah. 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 It's devastating. Yeah. But we're not going to stay there, right? Like, that's not where we're staying. So when I became disillusioned with environmental work, recognizing that the story I was carrying around, that all of this could be greened, that there were solutions within this construct, and then realizing, holy shit, there isn't. I do what I always do, which is go to nature. I needed to spend time with Earth. I need to spend time in awe, spend time in gratitude. And this is, I mean, you're all here because you love nature, I'm assuming. And you're all here because you have some sort of resonance with the natural world. And I don't know if you have places like that that you go to. Okay, we're going to touch, so bring that place up in mind for a second, just bring it up and then put it on like the back burner, if you know what a burner is. Yeah, they still use that term, right? A burner. So just put it in the back of your head somewhere. Okay. So what is the prevailing story we have about Earth right now? What do you think is happening with and to Earth? Because we can't clear out a story until we articulate it first. So what story are you carrying around? Or is in the collective conversation?
There's a collective belief that the way things now are the way they always were and always will be, like the weather
Oh.
and the changing of the weather and the shifting of things. And people think that because it's been this way 60 years, then it'll be that way forever.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Other beliefs?
The story we live in is one of separation, the story of the separate self.
Yeah. The story of separation, that we are separate from Earth somehow. Yeah. So there's a story that nothing's changing. This is how it is. There's a story of separation, other stories. Yeah.
Oftentimes hear people talk about how, well, there's been death and destruction and that story.
Wait, is it the same? Like things have always been like this? Is that weird?
Yeah, like there's always been war and death and destruction, and it's always been like this. So why care now?
Oh, Well, yeah, because we're still inside that story. That's why it's still going on. I
Mhm,
mean,
right.
yeah.
It's
But why
something,
care now? Huh?
right. Like
That's
I
interesting.
hear people kind of, I think they use that for comfort, to be honest. And sometimes I have to tell myself that for comfort, if I'm being completely honest, you
Well,
know?
yeah, and I appreciate you saying that because we have to have grace.
Mhm.
Yeah, I get that. Thank you. Other stories. How many of you hear the story that the planet is dying? Okay.
This may be simplistic. When I started planning my debate plan in the governor's race, I'm running for governor on the Green Party ticket. I thought of the idea that we live in a schizophrenic mind, all of us. So on the one hand, we can endorse fracking in Pennsylvania. And then on the other hand, we are in favor of reducing our dependence on fossil fuels. Those don't jive, but that thought is held within each of us simultaneously. And we don't make the connection, and that seems to be a problem. It's not that we're bad people, it's just that we're bad half the time. There's the good in us, and that we do understand the connection with the environment, for example.
Yeah, there's an incoherence is what I hear you saying. Absolutely. Thank you. Oh, one more comment over here. You're so patiently raising your hand.
One dominant story is, I don't know enough. There are others who are smarter than I. If there are others smarter than I, if it can be done, there are others smarter than I that can do it. That I don't have agency in this.
Oh, thank you. That is like a perfect segue. Thank you. You can only control your story. And you have so much agency and will over that story. That is yours to change. You have power over that story. And you can use that to create the world you want. I mean, I'm going to say more about that, but yes, what other people are doing, what other people believe, what's happening here, there, or what, it doesn't matter. That's a story that you're using to impinge on your ability to change your story. So thank you for saying that. Okay, one more thing I wanted to say here. I'm sharing pictures of the natural world because it feels good. And I think it's okay to take a moment to share things that feel good to our hearts. Purple dead nettle, if you don't know what that is, it's highly medicinal and it's edible. This is an area that I like to walk. I'm sharing it because it's a place that I have relationship with because I go hiking there like weekly all year round. So it feels like a relationship with place. When we talk about the supremacy of the written word and going to textbooks or resources for information, these are places that you can go to. Earth is telling a story about herself. Your heart can hear it. You have communion with Earth. Oh. So what story is Earth offering us about ourselves, about other beings, and about herself? And how might it be eclipsed by the supremacy we carry within ourselves? Those characteristics that we spent some time with earlier. We cannot go about the work of quote unquote saving Earth as though Earth needs saving without relationship. We are past the stage of polite and right action. We are being called to something more. And that is your own personal communion. And I would say with the divine. If you did not know this, you know this to be true, otherwise you wouldn't be here. Okay, I'm going to geek out for a minute here. I mean, not that I haven't been geeking out this whole time, but I wanted to geek out specifically about these plants. Lamb's quarters, dandelion, honeysuckle. And just to point them out as another way that supremacy concretely, physically, materially weaves its way into our understanding of what is edible, what is valued, and what is not valued. Those are considered weeds, historically have been considered weeds, have historically been considered invasive. As though white people have any right to call anything invasive. As though a person who traveled on 2 hours of pavement to get here can call a plant invasive. As though anyone who goes to a stadium that is nothing but parking lot and concrete to watch a sporting event can call anything in the living world invasive. That is a supremacist concept. And it can only happen if you regard pieces and parts of yourself as invasive, as somehow wrong, as somehow flawed, as somehow objectionable. It's not true. Let me talk about these plants. Lamb's quarters, super duper nutritious. I wrote out the list of all the things they have in them, but I'm not going to read to you that they are really high in, well, am I going to read to you? Fiber, calcium, iron, manganese, copper, omega-3 and omega-6. And of course, dandelion, you know, it's the most nutritional thing in the yard. Can you believe that? And we spray the shit out of it, or some people do, but not any of you. The whole thing is edible. It's medicinal. You can drink it. You can make a poultice out of it. All of this. And honeysuckle, my God, honeysuckle is magic. It is so good for you. Anti-inflammatory, antiviral. It's cardioprotective. It's antioxidant. I could go on and on. One of the things that we forget about Earth is that she is radically, radically abundant and generous all the time. And we are invited into that abundance. You don't know that if you don't spend time with Earth on Earth's terms. She is constantly giving. The only reason I got really into weeds is because I was a gardener and I worked as a farmhand and I worked in, did all this green and stuff. And I would be spending hours removing these highly nutritious medicinal plants. Oh, a little oxbow moment here. Do we not know the value of these plants because, one, the native peoples that lived here were destroyed? The people that may have relied on this food as staples, I know that honeysuckle was brought in, but do we not know that? Because if you travel to other countries and eat indigenous food, it's the food that grows there naturally without any inputs. Like the stuff that I grow in my garden, the tomatoes, the peppers, I have to constantly water and make sure there aren't like little bugs trying to eat them, although I don't mind sharing. But do you know what I mean? Those are things that don't regenerate on their own on a regular basis. But here's this Earth is offering me this all the time, and I'm dismissing it? Is that not a sign of supremacy? Here is Earth generously giving over and over again, but it's not what I'm used to eating. What? Does that make sense? How can we be in right relationship if we are dismissive of what earth gives patiently all the time to us, consistently, faithfully? Are you with me? Any more I want to say about these beauties in my yard? Let me think. Oh, okay. And another thing. Yes, there is one more thing I want to say. I'm curious. I wonder if there is a correlation between us knowing how to utilize these plants, how to live with them and work with them, because of all the women that were killed during the witch trials, right? Like another way that supremacy perhaps is woven our way into our collective stories. Okay. Moving on. I found this quote. I thought it might be resonant or interesting for you. Trauma in a person decontextualized over time looks like personality. Trauma in a family decontextualized over time looks like family traits. Yeah, that hits, doesn't it? Trauma in a people decontextualized over time looks like culture. If we are actively in the story of trauma, we cannot create the world that we want to live in. And this trauma has been normalized. And so when you feel teary, thank you. Yes, this is heavy stuff. And yet Earth is offering us constantly a different story. If we don't dismantle the domination narrative from within, we will continue manifesting it without. The number of environmental or land defenders murdered every year continues to rise. Extractive industries continue, mining industries specifically, seem to run our world. Questions, comments, points of resonance, points of dissonance. I'll take it all. Yeah.
I don't know, I can just like what that brought up for me in this picture is like I went to school in Kentucky and we visited a mountain that a family owned that used to be the shortest mountain in the area and surrounded by all these mountains. And within this one woman's lifetime, it had become the tallest mountain in the area because of mountaintop removal. And, you know, you look out and you see these machines that look like little, like little tiny machines, but in reality, they're like as big as this building and like crazy shit. And, you know, now I'm in Missouri and I live in a house that has electric lighting. And, you know, I think about it like almost every time I leave a light on in a room for like too long, I get this like anxiety about coal mining. And the fact that so many of the things that we depend on in modern society are like contributing to mountaintop removal. But at the same time, like that's just how we live. And so like I just sit with that, I guess, is
Yeah.
I don't really have like a
Thank you for sharing that. I used to be plagued by things like that. And that goes back to the personal responsibility piece of supremacy and the right, wrong sense of urgency. Like there's so many reasons that weighs heavily on you. But if we understand that our stories create reality, then I would argue that we as individuals in a supremacist culture are doing tremendous damage to ourselves, to our soul's integrity, in order to enact that, in order to manifest that in the outer reality. And so for me, the two things come up. There's a tremendous sense of compassion for those who work in that industry, for the amount of suffering that we are carrying in order to commit such suffering in the world, right? That is how much we have normalized extractive industries within ourselves. You know, when you think about working a 40-hour work week, fuck, like that's, you know, what? The ways that we are out of touch with our bodies, the way that we normalize having a disease and having to take medications for the rest of our lives, like all these things we normalized, that's violence. We live inside violent systems. We cannot do anything out there until we emancipate ourselves from within and restore, create different stories within ourselves. We just can't do. And the reason we can't is because Earth is about integrity. The divine is about integrity. There is no way we can create solutions out there and be allowed to suffer inside. There is no way. The divine wants more for us than that. Every system in nature, every ecosystem. Oh, here, let me get to that slide. Oh, wait, I got this. Okay, check this out. Is this the one where I'm talking? I hope not. No, okay, good. So do you see this little bee? Do you see that? Wait, so this is, maybe not, you can't see it, I don't know. Look at that, okay, good, yes. Okay, here is what, this bee is fully, I'm gonna geek out again. This bee is fully articulated as itself. The flower is fully articulated as itself. The prairie is fully articulated as itself. Together, that full articulation of selves create a robust ecosystem. That's our model. That's our template of how to be in the world. That's what I mean about what the divine wants for us, what Earth wants for us is full integrity. We don't get to save the planet if we are suffering inside and live within shit systems that are unjust. No, we don't get to do that. You know what I mean? That's like inauthentic, that there's no integrity in that. We are invited into creating different stories where we get to be fully articulated as ourselves so that we can live in this way in the world and create this in the world. That's what we are invited to. And that's the beauty of everything crashing down, because it doesn't work, because people are suffering, because people have disease that they normalize and live with on a daily basis, because people are not making ends meet, because we have a for-profit prison system, because you know what I'm like, because we have war still, because we keep doing all this stuff that is harmful. Like, it's incoherent to expect us to just keep greening without all of this being cleared up for us. We are loved too much for that to be the case. Does that make sense? Are you with me? Huh? I'm sorry?
It's one of those things.
Oh, okay. But this is what I go to when I think about what can we do on this planet. I go here. I go to the prairie, I go to the woods, I go to the river, and I see examples of these robust, flourishing ecosystems where every being gets to be fully articulated as itself. That's available to each and every one of us when we change our story that we're carrying around inside ourselves. I mean, you have to want it, right? And you have to like make change too. Questions, points of resonance. Oh yeah, bring it. Is there any questions on Zoom or comments?
Okay. A little bit of a political plug here. You're an ideal Green Party person because the Green Party's been advocating these measures for years, and of course we're a voice in the wilderness, but we keep trying. But I wanted to ask you, and I asked this of our experts in the party, on the environmental issues, what does the world look like when it's freezing cold out at night, and how are we going to keep ourselves warm? What do you think about, what kind of solutions that would make that possible?
You mean besides coil?
Yeah,
That's a mixture of coal and oil. Coil.
obviously, yeah,
Uh-huh.
as an alternative,
Yes.
something that's ecologically friendly.
Why,
but how
yes,
do we
I'm
stay
so glad
warm?
you asked. Yeah, I mean, I look to our indigenous forebears because all of us are indigenous to a place. And I look to their models for refrigeration or preservation, for housing, for all the different things that they did to live lives that were robust, flourishing with less work and healthier, than we are doing now. So yes, those models exist. Indigenous people are doing that, have done that. Those are models that are provided for us. They're historically available for us to research and find. I'm not saying that that's where what I am suggesting. We can't even think about that until we restory ourselves. And this is beyond, for me, this is beyond political party. This is beyond the illusion of countries, states, any of that. If we are one, and we are one, this is beyond that. We restoring ourselves is beyond the imagination that is eclipsed by these supremacist ideas of separation and self belonging to a party or whatever, for me.
So,
But everybody's on their own journey. I get that. But that I'm saying for me, yeah, I'm somewhere
so
else.
you can't answer that.
Answer what?
That question.
I did about
How do we stay warm
yeah.
this winter?
We visit the knowledge of our indigenous forebears.
And
They were doing that.
That included burning wood.
Okay.
In the teepees, they had to have a fire.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like that's a longer conversation that's not within the scope of this. Yeah. And also ask yourself what is behind your question that this is a sticking point for you. Ask yourself that question. Because if that is a sticking point for you, then maybe that is a shield for restoring from your heart.
Oh, I don't think that it's improper to ask, how am I going to stay warm this winter?
Okay. Yeah, but it's not, this isn't that
So
conversation.
obviously, we've got to reorient our way of thinking in our lives. And, but in the meantime, or at the end of this process, you still have to stay warm. So how are we going to do that? I mean, what mechanism do we use to stay warm?
So one of the things that I'm learning is that the Newtonian era is ending, and we are not living in a cause and effect time anymore. We are living in a time, the spiritual evolution that we are being called into is that we have to create reality within ourselves in order to create reality out there. So once you have committed to a different way of being, what you need will arise from the quantum realm. So that's where I'm headed.
Right.
And you can join me. What's your question? Wait, wasn't your hand up? Oh.
Farm life.
Did you bring it with you or?
Yeah, I was laying in some straw earlier. Because it's important to take breaks at work.
I don't
Something
have
that-
straw at my work. No.
something that came to my mind that brings me comfort and is the way that I am able to feel good about restoring and being rebellious in this world.
Did you say
again.
being rebellious?
Yeah.
Okay.
In supremacy, acting through community. So like I can't make systems and myself, but what I can do is offer my friends soup when they're sick. create a relationship there so that when I'm sick, they can make me some soup, maybe, but that's not expected, it's not expected, but just a way that I like to move throughout life that reminds me of this bee and going
Yes.
from thing to thing, and the prairie being an ecosystem, like creating my own ecosystem of my neighbors and my friends and so on and so forth.
100%. Yes, you're creating those ecosystems of care. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I love that.
Can I think I'm tie some of those things together. It's much better if you were not hearing, if you're standing by the speaker. I don't get all the echoes, but so here's the bee on the flower and the prairie. Well, where are we? We are not in a living ecology. We've sought comfort, we've sought convenience, we've sought safety. We want to keep ourselves warm, and we live in boxes. We live in boxes, and now we're having this meeting with all the technology which it requires. And we're not in this living system. We've stepped away from that. And no doubt our ancestors, they lived much more closely to nature, but we've gone a long way away from that. And are we thinking about living like our early indigenous ancestors lived, or how are we going to convert what we're doing now, living in these boxes, living separated from all the rest of the living world, into making our connections and being part of that ecology again? Can we get back to that? We have the burden of consciousness. We have the burden of being able to think. All these things have been constructed with human tools. We have the ability to make all these things, and it's what an amazing world. But now we live in this human ecology, which is separate from that ecology.
Oh, are you asking me what to do?
Well, I'm not sure there's an answer.
Oh, I've got answers. Okay. Thank you for that question. Okay. I wonder if that question comes from this disorientation of here's what we know and what we do. Here's a new idea. How do I pivot to implementing it? That idea of if it's not this, it's got to be that. It took us a long time to get here. We repeated this story over and over and over again to get here. It's like developing a skill, like learning how to play racquetball, play chess, whatever. Repetition brought us here. What you're asking is how to run a marathon when we haven't even stretched or bought the right shoes. Do you hear what I'm saying? So you're asking a question over here when we're still on, we don't even know if we can run yet. Do you know what I'm saying?
There's a piece to this that I've heard somebody say, that we're gradually growing up.
We what?
We're gradually growing up.
Yeah, we're evolving.
We've been on this planet for a short period of time, and we've made all these things, human progress with all our technology.
Yeah.
And we've come to this point where we're hitting a wall, and somehow we have to change all that, change how the stories we live by, our consciousness.
Yeah.
We've got to grow up. Now, what that means, that growing up, what that means on this planet, is it possible? Is it possible for somebody with the brains that we have, the consciousness that we have, to actually live? Are we destined for killing ourselves off and taking a lot of other things with us?
Well, we choose our own destiny and we create our own reality. So I don't know if we're destined to do that. If we continue in this story, certainly our chances of that are greater. Two, one of the things about, one of the characteristics of supremacy is intellectualism and cerebralizing things. I don't think we need to change the way we think. We do need to change the way I think, but the main thing we need to do is feel. Get in our bodies and feel. Live within our senses, live in our bodies, so that we know how to be with other bodies, other beings' bodies, with Earth body. Supremacy has been an exercise in intellectualism and experiencing the world from the head up. I'm inviting us back into our bodies. I'm inviting us to maybe let our heart lead. Where it will take us is different than where we've been. That's perhaps uncomfortable because our mind wants us to engage what we know and break this down into pieces that we can understand. If we can understand it, then we wouldn't be evolving at this moment. And we are being asked to evolve. If I can grasp it with my mind, then I'm grasping it with my old story. And my old story is, my new story is in my heart, is what I want to say. And is that resonating? Do you hear me? Are you with me? Does that feel vague? Talk to me.
It's kind of waking up something that, so Kristen in the back there has tried to teach me. We do an activity with kids, little fourth graders in a boat, and we only have a few minutes with these kids in this boat. And so it's very valuable time, and our whole goal is to get them in a space where they're actually looking outside the boat, and just taking things in and then engaging with it and engaging with each other and engaging with the place, right? So one of the parts of it, they're generating questions, and they have a lot of questions, and some of these questions have answers. And it's always this interesting balancing act between wanting to give them the answer that they want, or like them having this struggle where they don't have an answer, but they're like engaging with the place, and they're engaging and they're trying to understand. And sometimes that is actually more powerful than having the answer. But like that, I forget, there was a term for it that Kristen told me, something about struggle, but
like discomfort is necessary discomfort.
Something like that. Yeah.
It's like for learning to take place and settle into their conceptual framework, a struggle has to happen within learning. So you can't just like answer their question and pour the information in. And if you pause in your teaching sometimes and let the struggle occur, then they can find the answer, or you can guide them to the answer through visiting their own explanations for how they see the world or have experienced things in other learning spaces.
Yes, I'm not here to provide answers because this is not something to consume. That would be an extractive engagement here. Well, tell us how we're going to do this. No. You get to figure this out because you get to be the bee or the flower or the worm or the dragonfly or the whatever. Your relationship with Earth is your relationship with Earth. That is not up to me to tell you how to do. How that's manifest, what the dominoes of that will be, that's your relationship. And we live in a soundbite. You can Google anything and find the answer world, but that's not how human interaction works. I'm not here to say, oh, well, if you do this, here's the answer for how. No. If that worked, we wouldn't be in the mess that we're in now. We wouldn't be at this evolutionary step where, no, we are required to evolve and grow and create our own relationship, to restory ourselves in some way. Okay. It's we've been at this for quite a while. Okay. Yeah. I'm like, oh, wow. I'd love to hear myself talk. Okay. So, oh, she just went away. Embracing Sweetgrass, Walt Kimmerer braids science and indigenous knowledge. I am braiding relationship with earth through gratitude, awe, and frankly, orgasmic transcendence. Yes, that I experience in nature. We are one. Decolonizing myself means learning myself as a divine being in communion with. This is who we are, and this is what we're invited to. This is the story that you're being invited to, or that's my story that I'm being invited to. Yours might be a little bit different. That's my story. So we're going to do a little meditative thing. Where did my little meditative thing go? Oh, some books that have been informing me. The Secret Life of Water, obviously Braiding Sweetgrass, fantastic fungi. Pleasure Activism, it's not an environmental book. The Uses of Erotic by Audre Lorde. And then here's another list of resources, but down below, I put down my sources. The top part is like stuff that I read, websites that I go to, things that I follow. I'll be sending you all that. And below are places that I have relationship with that inform my relationship with Earth. Where transcendence happens, where I get to experience myself feeling like I'm loved by Earth. And I don't know if you've ever had that experience where you go on a hike or you're watching a sunset or you're in the water or you're in the prairie or you're walking in snow and you feel like you're being made love to by the divine through nature. That's the relationship we're called to. So let's do a little meditative exercise. I'm going to ask you all to close your eyes at the risk that you will fall asleep. Okay. So, close your eyes. People on Zoom, close your eyes. Okay. So I've shared a lot of images with you through this presentation. And I suspect if you're here, you have a love for Earth too. So I want you to see the place where you feel your heart open, where you feel Earth loving you. What does it look like? What sounds do you hear? What sensations do you experience on your skin? And what does it smell like? How do you experience this place in your senses, in your body? And you know, when you recollect, when you have a memory and you name it in your senses, your body does not know the difference between actually being there and remembering it. So right now, your body thinks you're in that experience. So marinate in that for a minute and express gratitude. Say thank you for how your experience in and with that place nourishes you. Honor that connection. Feel yourself embraced and held by that experience. Feel gratitude, reverence, joy. And if those words are not part of your vocabulary, I invite you to consider how reverence, joy, peace, gratitude can become a part of your experience with Earth, through Earth, with yourself. And how might those experiences that you're having right now in this beautiful place, how might that rewrite whatever part of the story of self you carry holds these characteristics of supremacy? How might it release you, emancipate you, open your heart to something greater and deeper and wider, to communion with Earth, with yourself? That is your true story. That is your home. And when you're ready to come back into this space, say thank you. Say thank you. Your communion with, that's your story. The deep story underneath all the other ones. Your communion with the divine is your story. So the little picture of a cicada that was on my fence post, isn't that cool? I share it because this is really symbolic of the shedding we have to do. Relinquishing this old husk that no longer serves in order to become new. That metamorphosis, that's what you're invited to. Without that change, we can't have peaceful, joyful, easeful relationship with ourselves, with other beings, and with Earth. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your attention. Thank you for your questions. Thank you for your comments. Any closing last remarks, questions, complaints? I don't want to hear those. Anything? Yeah. Oh, no, I can't. I saw it in a bookstore and I thought, oh, that's perfect for my event. So that's all I got for you. I could have really made better, huh? Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. That's it. Y'all are free to go, right? Oh, darn it. I had one more thing, but that's all right. Can I go ahead? I had one more thing. I totally forgot I had one more thing. Did I put it in here? Yes. Okay. I'm sorry. Psych. I got one more thing. This is the last thing. I wanted to close with a poem that I wrote because I'm a poet too. And I'm sharing this poem because I think it gets to sort of what I hope for you. So get back in your meditative space. Is that, yeah, it'll be, yeah. Trust me, it's worth your time. Sit down. I went on a retreat, and in the retreat, this is kind of what happened. Take something, an exhortation from the retreat. Chinkapin oak, leafing green insulation from blistering August. Distant braying and near crowing staccato and insect symphony underscoring stillness. Guinea eggs, brindle, squash vines. Purple black eggplant, lean, Third trimester heavy on stakes. Bees dizzy a lavender bush, and hummingbird moths grace fuchsia zinnias, while golden swallowtails fan Queen Anne's lace, and dragonfly wings catch iridescence. Late season raspberries tang my tongue as tears tang my eyes. Wonder splashes beyond this paltry list, the flimsy sieve of language. There is no need to take. I am given. Thank you.